back here with another Diablo 4 blind tech. Now, the short version of what we're going for here is how do you build your character properly. You build your character via getting good gear and accumulating skill points via leveling up. And both of these will result in more and more powerful gear dropping, eventually getting to the point where you have an in-game build together. Now, an in-game build will usually comprise of one skill that does all your damage, and the other 5 skills are usually there for more defense or utility or some other benefit. Now, if we look here, my main hand weapon, the legendary power. I'll read this first. Plus 18.7% critical strike damage, 18.7%. Plus 58 willpower plus 54 height and 61. Plus 66 maximum life, 66 height and 73. Plus 12.0% damage, 11.0 height and 13.0%. Plus 16.0% critical strike damage, 15.5 height and 20.0%. Critical strikes which deal 68%, 60 height and 75% of the damage dealt is light. Okay, so as you heard in that weapon, there's 2 stat blocks that mention crit damage, and the legendary power makes Shred do lightning damage in the area around the target whenever it crits. So I want Shred to crit as much as it can, and I want my crit damage and damage in general to be high, so that way it does a good amount of crit damage on anything around the shredded target, right? Now, you have more aspects to look at, so if we look at the amulet, I don't want to read the whole thing, but the blurred base aspect will be another vital one, because it gives me a flat, like 100% or 90% damage multiplier on Shred, and Shred has a 4th hit, so it's just more damage, right? Bigger multiplier. Next piece is the gloves. This is the gloves of retaliation. Whenever I have the fortify stat on my character, and the text-to-speech will tell me when I'm fortified, whenever that is active, I get a bigger damage multiplier. So just stacking multipliers, right? More damage, more damage, more damage. So then now we look at the rings. I have a unique ring and a legendary ring. The legendary ring does something about the ultimate power. Whenever I proc an ultimate, I think it's every 10th ultimate, or every time I cast an ultimate, I might get a damage multiplier for 10 seconds, and that stacks up higher and higher and higher. And then the Hunter's Zenith ring, I don't remember what it does. It basically guarantees, it eventually will guarantee me some cool damage, I think. I don't remember what it does. So, those are the main, like, damage-based utility things, right? So look at the rest of the kit. What I got for a helm. The vigorous helm here. Get some life. Life regen. Spare for a second. Percent armor. Okay, so I have 8% total armor. I have 10% damage reduction while shapeshifted to werewolf, so that's just always there, right? Because I'm always a wolf. Then I have my runes, which runes are only accessible to those who bought the DLC. And then, so that in general, pretty okay-ish helmet. Not the greatest, but it's okay. So the Mad Wolf Scully is my unique chest piece. Attack speed. So this gives me 7 skill ranks to every one of my werewolf abilities. All of them. Meaning more damage, quicker cooldowns, whatever the skill ranks do, right? Based on each ability. So then next we have the legs and the boots. It's just Storm Shifter and Dark Owl. So the pants, whenever I have the Hurricane ability on me, it gives me even, I think, plus 8 skill ranks to my abilities, my shape shifting, so werewolf. And then the boots make my Big Bear Roar ability, Bear Shout ability, as a werewolf ability. So it just converts that. And it also makes enemies who are poisoned around me immobilized. The reason why it's important is it's adding another crowd control, which can help stagger bosses, but also immobilizes other threats. And the other thing is I don't lose my multipliers from being werewolf form and stuff, right? Because I don't change into bear. It might be a good thing to do that, though, eventually, if I get the build right. So generally, from the idea here is this. The only really defensive thing I have on me are my boots and my helm. Everything else is pretty offensively based, so a lot of my ability to not die is moving and dodging and being super fast, as well as just out healing the damage as best I can. With some of my abilities, and I have healing on hit and healing per second, stuff like that. But on top of that, I've also maximized as much as I can my armor and my element damage resistance. And you do that through your gear and gems that you can put in your jewelry and gear, and also from your skills. So your skill tree. So if I look at the druid here, let's go over here.
Defensive posture, natural trample, casting trample. Battleman, lucky hit, up to 10%, preserving ability, innate blood howl, enhanced blood howl, kills reduce enhanced cyclone armor, defense, backlash, rank, defensive skills mitigate damage received and increased, raging shred, shred and apples, enhanced, earthen, defensive skills mitigate damage, vigilance, rank 3/3, you gain 21% damage reduction for 6 seconds after using defensive skill, left action button, refund rank.
So right there, that passive gives me a bunch of damage reduction whenever I cast a defensive skill. Right, so that's pretty cool.
Brutal wolf pack.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
Primal shred, shred and apple. Defensive skills mitigate damage received and increased. Ancestral foot, vigilance, primal shred. Defensive skills mitigate ancestral vigilance, rank, ancestral fortitude, rank 3/3. Increase your non-physical resistances by 15% plus. Left action button.
Increase your non-physical resistances by 15%. That's your fire, shadow, cold, lightning, and poison resistances. And the druid just gets that, right? Spiritborn gets the poison. Sorry about that. Every class will have some way to buff up their flat damage reduction modifier, their armor, or their element resistances. Every class has one. The other option to help defenses is an option called a fortify. If you have a way to be fortified, you essentially get 10% more damage reduction onto yourself. And there's other little things like the druid having a skill where you'll get 6% more on top of the fortified, so you get 16% damage reduction on fortified instead of just 10, stuff like that, right? You'll have damage reduction from close enemies. You'll have things like damage reduction from poison enemy. Just a whole bunch of little conditional things that add up over time to make it easier to not die. So if we look at the skills, how do my skills work? Right, what do I have here? So if I click on my skill bar, so I have claw as my square, or sorry, claw as my X, my bottom action. Shred is my left action. And then debilitating roar, I don't remember what that's, I don't remember a button that's tied to. Rabies, lacerate, and blood howl. So generally speaking, because of the way my multipliers all want to work, I want to be able to hit people with rabies, let the rabies spread a little bit, then I start wailing on them, then I pop lacerate, so my ultimate, then from there I just mash shred. I just hold shred down, just walk through everything, killing it all in one hit, right? And that rotation will carry me through a lot of content in the game. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's working, and it's very fun and very fast, right? So the build is comprised of my amulet and gloves and main hand weapon and offhand weapon, and two of both my ring slots, all contributing toward damage. My chest piece sort of doing a bit of damage and utility and survivability. My helmet doing survivability. My boots and pants survivability. And then on top of that, I have gems in my ring, amulet, and other ring. I personally put diamonds in, but the diamonds give you flat all resistance. So you don't have to worry about like, oh, is my fire at 70 and my gold at 60? Let me put a cold gem in there, right? So you don't have to worry about that. And then my other item sockets are taken up with critical damage on my main hand weapons, and then my armor pieces all have just my main stat, my willpower. So generally, how do you get stronger, right? How do you go about getting better gear and leveling faster to get more skill points and proceed to harder content and get more better gear and harder content? Generally, you have a couple ways of doing this. One, most obvious, is the campaign and the expansion campaign. Those are pretty self-explanatory. Most people can probably get that done. Let's assume you have it done, right? What do you do after the campaigns are all done? Well, Each season of the game will have a season quest and season storyline to go through, and it'll help you introduce you to the end game. It'll introduce you how the game works, functionally speaking, and so this results in how sort of learning the ropes. You have a bunch of different activities, including Helltide, including Whisperers, including Night. My wife's talking in her sleep. Nightmare Dungeons and other activities, but generally, you can level to max level just by doing Helltides and Whispers. You do not need to interact with dungeons, even though they are beneficial. You don't necessarily need to. And the audio navigation helps with the Helltide and the Whispers, so that's the easiest for a lot of new players to get into and understand. You have other methods of gaining more power, such as the pit, but that's not a big deal until later in the game once you hit 60. As well as Infernal Hordes, again, not a big deal until you get 60, because you can't access Infernal Hordes until you clear some of the pit. So the pit is basically your progression. If you can't clear the pit, you can't go higher and get better loot. Which, to some people, is a bottleneck, because they're unable to clear the pit on their own. And so they feel like they're stuck, which I understand the frustration. However, what I'm going to say is probably controversial. In my opinion, at this point, any blind person, if they're willing to put in the effort, can make it work in Diablo. It's not 100% fully accessible throughout the entirety of the game, but there's enough proof out there that other blind people have done it, so I have faith that other people can do it as well. It's just a matter of people putting the effort in. I'm not saying it'll be easy, I'm not saying that everyone can, but if you're willing to, I'm sure you can find a way to do it. So, let's just assume that I want to go look for a better ring, right? A couple ways of doing this. One, I could buy a ring. It's not the most creative way to do it, and it's probably the worst way to do it, but you can if you'd like, right? It's your option. Your next option is to complete Whispers and go for, see if you can find Whisper caches that give you rings, right? So that helps. Once you hit Torment difficulty and you're in Helltides, you can look for ring chests, and they'll open and they'll drop just rings for you. You can gamble. If you do the world events, the world events will give you obels. It's a gambling currency. You gamble with the currency and get legendary. You can get legendary powers or legendary weapons items. So you have that option. So you have a couple ways of getting power, right? Generally, as long as you're playing the game and actually killing stuff and actually completing events, completing Whispers, running around in Helltide, running around in maybe participating in a world boss, as long as you're doing something, you're more than likely going to find decent enough gear to be at the content level, right? The other thing as well, check your stash regularly. Stashes locations are different in every town, but if you miss a legendary for whatever reason, it'll be sent to your stash like a mail, and you can go pick it up, right? Generally at this point in the game where I'm at, I just salvage everything because I don't need to bother. If you like to sell stuff, you can, but I don't advise selling anything up until probably level 50 or 60. Because you need the crafting materials and salvaging materials more than the gold. Your gold should be coming from Whisper turn-ins, as well as events and other sources. It's not a big deal to not have that much gold. You'll be bottlenecked more by the crafting mats and the gold. And the other thing I forgot to mention, you do have trading in this game as well. So trading is gold and all items in the game aside from mythic uniques. Mythic uniques are not a big deal, don't worry about it right now. That's like very, very rare to get. But I hope some of this helped sort of clear up how a build generally will function. You want to always make sure you have your build sort of feeding into itself of like, okay, well, obviously shred is my damage, right? The blurred beast aspect, the stormclaw aspect, those both guarantee my shred. Oh, the retaliation, those all guarantee my shred will be doing big damage, right? but I also want the shred to be critical hitting as much as I can, so I get more crit strike chance potential, and I add more crit damage. So it just turns into just crit everywhere, lightning damage everywhere, and everything gets poisoned and dies, right? So, and then of course you have your defensives. So you have things like barriers to not worry about direct hits or projectiles. You have things like fortify, which again can help mitigate death opportunities. Generally speaking, so long as you're playing and actually actively doing stuff like events or whispers, you're more than likely going to find good enough gear. If you have any further questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I hope this was enough of a basic idea of how a build will function. Just really quick, I do want to cover how that skill tree navigation works. You have your left stick or the direction pad. Either one will let you navigate the skill tree. It might be easier to bounce around with the D-pad, but if you need to find a specific skill, then use your left stick, right? Just depends. So I'll start with the claw skill. I'm up here. So I'm gonna arrow down. Okay, I'm getting through some of the skill tree. Okay. Cool, right? So it's pretty self-explanatory. Right? You're scrolling through, and it's just going through. And as you navigate the D-pad, it tells you certain things, right? It'll say like, this skill does this, and there's an enhanced version and an innate version. The skill points are up to 60 skill points, and was it 60? I think it's 60, 59, 60. And you can have up to, I think, 72 total skill points, I believe. You need to do your renown eventually. Renown rewards are acquired via side quests, strongholds, finding altars of Lilith, as well as clearing dungeons if you would like to try them, and exploring the map, just over the world. And it does take some time, but you can get the renown done. I have the renown done in every region except the brand new expansion region, and you can always find people to assist as well, of course, with the party finder in the game or in the Setlist Slayer server. But as far as the rest of the skill tree goes, I'm getting off topic. Again, you have your left stick as well, so I'm going to scroll with the left stick, just move around a little bit.
Whenever you are stunned, immobilized or knocked out, unrestrained. Perfect storm. Nature and
So right here, you see. So you see right there, that's Envenom. That's a passive. Gives me crit damage against poison enemies. That's just more crit damage for Shred to bounce off of. But if I want to look at an active skill, let's look at Shred, right? It's a core. It says spirit cost.
First attack, dash towards the target and deal 670, 109% damage. Second attack, deal 928, 151% damage. Third attack, perform a large finishing move, dealing 1843, 300% damage. Modifiers, Shred gains 30%, plus, attack speed and heals for 4% of your maximum life. 27, if an enemy is struck, Shred and Appos, S-base combo attack is larger and applies an additional 2457, 400% poison damage over 5 seconds, and causes enemies to take 150% X, increased poison damage for 5 seconds. Physical damage, right analog stick down, scroll down, top action button.
So, generally, does a lot of damage, right? And you can see that was what makes an active skill and a passive skill different. Passive skills, you do not need to press the button. Active skills, you need to. So here's a shortcut. If you get lost, click your left stick when you're on the skill tree. Click your left stick in. This will pull up a grid view from top to right, top left to top right, and top left to bottom right. It's a grid. It's a square essentially. And this grid will take you to all of your direct active skills. Not the passives, but it'll take you to the actives. You can sort of memorize the routes from the active skills to the passive skills to put points into them. If you say you want to jump from the mall basic, you click the right stick. Once you hear it, boom, now you're on the mall skill on the tree. But if you want to scroll down to your ultimates, click your left stick again, then click your right stick, let's say on Cataclysm. Now jump to Cataclysm. So generally, as long as you click your left stick, then click your right stick on whatever you want to get to, it'll jump you back and forth to wherever you want to go. Again, this does not work on passives. For passives, you will have to find them. It's not that tricky to find. And, you know, hopefully they can arrange it so that the right stick will pull up the passives, left stick pulls up the actives, and vice versa, right? Inverse operations. However, I hope this introductory video helped people to understand how the builds generally will function. I will go see if I can find some enemies to sort of demonstrate what I'm talking about, and then we'll go from there. So, thanks again for watching, and I'll just mute the mic now. Hopefully it does make it full, so we'll see if it actually mutes or not.
Anti-curry. Maniac. Wayward soul. Slay the enemies. Event. Stone cash. Cleaver. Stone cash. Button action button. Stone cash. Over. Barrier 0%. Stone cash. Button action button. Interact. Baleful chest. Razor spine. Razor spine. Razor spine. Razor spine. Razor spine. Razor spine. 87%. Razor spine. Razor spine. Razor spine. 39 seats of charge. 39.
Alright, hopefully it actually muted. If not, I tried to be quiet as best I could. But so generally not the most impressive fight in the game, but did try to demonstrate what I could. I ran in, I hit them with my rabies, which is a little bite, like infectious bite. I did my bear howl, which helped me heal and make them do less damage. And then from there, I just proceeded to just start mauling them with short triple. And then I did the howling wolf blood howl shout, just to get a bit more attack speed and healing out damage. So it wasn't too intricate of a fight, but that's the general idea how the build works, right? I am basically holding shred while pressing my other buttons to get myself buffed up in other ways. That's the short version of how to think of most builds, to be honest. You're either you're either building up your buffs and holding your damaging button and just pulling your buffs whenever you need them, or you have the other option of you have a big damage button that you press one time, but you have to do all your buffs in rotation, in order, in sequence before you press big boy button to do more damage one time and just walk through everything, right? It just depends on the build. But that's the general idea. Hopefully you guys found this helpful and enjoyable. Feel free to let me know down below.
31%.